Have you ever dreamed of joining us as a co-host of MedSurg Moments? If so, that dream might just be one step closer to becoming a reality.
Soon, AMSN will be initiating a nationwide search for 2 new co-hosts to join our MedSurg Moments team.
Wait, don't they need a whole bunch of podcast experience like us?
Eric, they'll need exactly as much experience as we had when we started, which was 0. So if you're listening, don't worry, no podcast experience is required. Just a passion for MedSurg nursing and an AMSN membership.
Keep a close eye on your email in early November, as AMSN will be sending out a co-host survey application to all AMSN members. Complete the application by the deadline to take the first step in the co-host selection process.
The email and survey application will also include everything you need to know about the time commitment and the volunteer term. So keep an eye on that inbox in early November, and good luck.
On this episode of MedSurg Moments,
each year, the AMSN President's Award is given to an AMSN volunteer who has contributed not only their time, but whose expertise as a medical surgical nurse improves our organization and has had an impact on the nursing community.
Announced today, this year's recipient has volunteered her time to many AMSN committees, serving in numerous roles to advance our specialties, thought leadership, areas of professional development, certification, scholarship, and advocacy.
I'm excited to reveal our mystery guest, the 2024 recipient of the AMSN President's Award, and
This is Eric.
Maritess,
Sydney,
Sam?
Neo.
and Laura. Welcome to MedSurg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses.
We're proud MedSurg nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey.
Today, I'm very pleased to say that we're here in Toronto, Canada at the 2024 AMSN Annual Convention.
this is a very special episode, not only because we are at the convention, but because we have with us a very special guest co-host as well, as a VIP mystery special guest who today received the 2024 AMSN President's Award.
So let's start with our special guest co-host, one of the original co-hosts of MedSurg Moments, and OG, as we like to say, Alyssa Brown.
Woohoo!
yes, thanks for having me back, you guys. I don't even remember the last time I was here, so let's think what's been going on. I have switched jobs. I'm now a nurse manager in a hospital. I'm having so much fun with that. I had no idea how much satisfaction I would find in that job. And I'm a grandma.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So what's your grandma name, most importantly?
Nana.
Okay, Nana. Nana, I like Nana.
Yeah.
That's approved.
Nana. We'll see if it sticks. I mean, he's only 4 months old right now. So
And
that's
then
what.
they usually end up giving you a name.
That's true. That's true. Although I did have someone tell me that you train them on what to call you.
Yes, there you go.
So we'll work on that.
Now, if it becomes banana, you know.
Which could be fitting. We'll see. So anyway, yeah, those are the big highlights, switching my job, becoming a grandma. But also, of course, the big reason I'm here is to help us celebrate our mystery special guest. Each year, the AMSN President's Award is given to an AMSN volunteer who has contributed not only their time, but whose expertise as a medical surgical nurse improves our organization and has had an impact on the nursing community.
That's right, Alyssa. Announced today, this year's recipient has volunteered her time to many AMSN committees, serving in numerous roles to advance our specialties, thought leadership, areas of professional development, certification, scholarship, and advocacy. Her leadership, particularly in the development and hosting of this podcast you're listening to, demonstrates her innovative spirit and passion for nursing.
That's right, this year's AMSN President's Award recipient is one of our own here at MedSurg Moments.
And as an original OG co-host, I'm excited to reveal our mystery guest, the 2024 recipient of the AMSN President's Award and original co-host of MedSurg Moments with that familiar English accent is Caroline Ashman. Caroline, welcome back and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. It is a pleasure to be back here with all of you and to be the recipient of this wonderful award. I feel very non-deserving. Better people than me have gone before me, but it's a wonderful honor and very exciting. And I'm very humbled by the whole experience, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I feel like were such a leader here as we were starting this podcast. I would love for you to take us back to the moment you were first notified that you would be this year's recipient of the President's Award and the emotions that you felt when you were introduced in front of your med-surg nursing peers today here in Toronto.
I got the call just about a week and a half ago. Marisa tried to connect with me, but I was out of town with work and there was a time difference. And so I said, can I just get back to you? Honestly, my first thought was, they're cutting something. They're cutting this thing. I say, I'm never going to be able to go out on the road again. I always think the worst. And then she called me and we had the conversation. We're kind of having some small chit chat. And I'm like, if you're going to deliver bad news, just tell me now. And she's like, actually, no, it's quite good news. The board has met and voted and you're the recipients of this award. So I burst into tears. That's what my first reaction was. It was just so out of the blue, and there'd been such stuff going on with my work and with my home life, and it was just, I just burst into tears. My daughter came into my office. She's like, what's the matter? Did you lose your job? I'm like, no, actually, this is quite the opposite. So it was a wonderful call, and once upon a time we used to surprise people, and I think historically that would have not worked well for me at all. So I'm glad that the head was up.
They did ask me if they should surprise you, and I told them their options on the response. So.
She swore us to secrecy. We couldn't tell you.
Yeah. That's true. I did. I had to.
Yeah, I do love to surprise people, but I don't think I'm very good on the receiving end, So there you go.
I think, like I said, I told them what kind of reactions they would have gotten, and they chose which way they wanted to go. Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't think I was that prepared this morning. I would have been even less prepared if it was just sprung on me. But anyway, yes, it's wonderful and fabulous. So thank you.
Well, it's well deserved. I want to say personally that it's been an honor to work with you on this podcast. I love getting to know you. I love listening and learning from you. You have been a mentor to me. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
But also, we've talked before, and you had two dreams early in life that you've talked about before. One was to become a nurse, and the other was to live in the United States. Can you take us back to your childhood in England and share your story from that point to this present moment?
To the last decade, a million years ago? Absolutely. Let's take a trip down memory lane. I cannot explain why I wanted to become a nurse. I cannot explain why I wanted to live in the United States. I just knew that that's what I had to do. I was about 5 years old, and there was this little comic book called Twinkle. And every so often they would do the little free gifts. And one particular week, there was a nurse's uniform. And my mom couldn't find a copy, and my dad couldn't find a copy. My grandma apparently searched high and low for this Twinkle magazine. And that was the start of it, the little apron and the hat. I have no family members that were nurses. I didn't have any influence from them. It's just something at the core I knew I wanted to do. Maybe because I knew it was a job for life. When you get fed up with one part of nursing, you can move into something else. But I just knew that's what I wanted to do. So my goal in high school was to get the grades that I needed to get me into a nursing program. I applied to just 2, I think, or maybe 3 hospitals. Back in the day, it was not a university-based program. That didn't exist in England. It was a diploma hospital-based program, of which I'm very proud because I think that it was the most solid foundation anyone could have gotten. And especially when I moved to the United States, I was actually quite shocked when I realized how little clinical time American-trained nurses got. And that's always been a big component whenever I've precepted students, exposing them to as much as they possibly can. So 3-year diploma program, and one of my instructors, who we just didn't get along, she said my enthusiasm was there at the beginning and it waned. She said, what are you going to do when you graduate? I said, well, I'm going to get a couple of years experience and I'm going to move to America. And her response was, well, good luck with that. In 1991, My husband had returned from the Persian Gulf War. He was in the Royal Navy. And I said, I'm going to America. And he said, okay, I'll come with you. Essentially, he gave up his military career to follow me to America because I just knew that it was going to work out. We sold everything. I turned up here with 3 suitcases. He was finishing off his last deployment. That was in October of 1991. It was actually Halloween. I flew out and started my first position in Little Rock, Arkansas. They heard me speak, and you get that curious. It's like, you're not from around here, are you? I'm a city girl, so we stayed in Little Rock for 6 years. It was a great start. It was a wonderful facility. That's what got me into renal transplant. But we needed to be somewhere a little bit more metropolitan. So in 97, on the heels of the Olympics in Atlanta, we moved from a town of less than 200,000 to 5 million. So that was big enough. We stayed in Georgia for 20 years. I thought I had a career move that would lead to retirement in Florida. I love Disney, and so this was the opportunity to carve the way. We stayed in Florida for 5 years, 2 hurricanes. Storms never happen on the Gulf Coast. It's always the Atlantic side. Said no one ever. We're going back to Georgia. So we're back in Georgia now, and that's home, and that's where we plan to be. Professionally, I'm now working for a healthcare workforce solutions company, assisting with onboarding and competencies and providing education for our talent that are out on the road and our clients as well. So very different, a huge learning curve for me, but still allows me to get out there with AMSN and continue to volunteer and continue to teach certification review classes and have this wonderful treat today to come back and be a special guest on the podcast.
Can you talk a little bit about how you got involved with AMSN?
I received an email. A colleague forwarded it to me looking for CRC faculty. And she forwarded it to me and she said, I can't do this right now. She had young children. She said, but you can do it and you would probably be really good at this. So I answered the email and then by default figured I should find out who this AMSN were all about. I was not familiar back then. I did my homework and discovered that this is still the only organization, professional organization for medical surgical nurses. And even though I was working in renal transplant at the time, my heart has always been in med-surg because there's an outcome, especially with the surgical side of things. And it was very apparent from the get-go back then, and we're talking mid-80s, early 90s, that everybody back then should do 2 years of med-surg nursing as a foundation and then move on to something bigger and better. As I say every time I teach a class, this is bigger and better. Med-surg patients now are more complex than they ever were. Some of them should be in PCU. And it's important that we have a voice and we have a collective voice with AMSN. So I've always been a supporter and a proponent and an advocate for the organization because I think over the years we've achieved some wonderful goals and had a lot of success with things like certification and getting the word out in ways that I'd never realized via the podcast. And we must continue to do that because medical surgical nurses, as we all know, are still the biggest part of healthcare.
0.75 million in the U.S. I looked that number up. How many said 1.75 million med-surg nurses in the U.S.
And as much as technology and virtual nursing is coming into play, no one will ever replace a bedside nurse, especially a medical surgical nurse, because we have such a wide skill set and our knowledge has to be so deep. And that's another thing that AMSN can help facilitate.
Caroline, I'm confident our listeners want to get a full update since the last time we heard from you back in February during our anniversary episode. What's been going on?
Well,
and more importantly, last night we were kind of hanging out and it seems like you have this love of heavy metal that's kind of unknown to most people, let alone your inner circle here. So give us a little background on that, because you were name dropping some bands from back in the day that kind of made Laura and I go, oh, excuse me.
Well,
Yes, do tell.
Let the people out there know she's blushing.
Talk about being a metalhead.
so work-wise,
Yes.
what's that?
Talk about being a metalhead.
We need to know about you being a metalhead, but yeah, tell us the update first.
Okay, first, yeah, okay. The updates first. Well, I've been very busy with this company that I work for, developing education. Currently, we have 2 nurse leader workshops that we're delivering at 2 different facilities, both in the United States, but one is in New York and the other one is in Hawaii. So that was
Aloha.
Aloha, indeed. That was a nice bonus.
How do I get into that
Teach
leader
class there.
workshop?
Yes, we'd like to attend your workshop.
Yes, I would in Hawaii. Yes.
There you
You
go.
need support staff.
Yes.
Yes, sure.
Also an educator, don't forget.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You can do your advertising.
Yes.
I'll be your marketing.
I can do that.
I got a big mouth. I'll go out there.
Absolutely. The craziest thing about Hawaii, real quick, is that it took me longer to fly to Hawaii from Atlanta than it does for me to fly to London. Yet you're still in the United States. Yesterday, I got on a plane for an hour and 20 minutes, and then you're in this whole other country. You know,
Yeah.
it just it didn't make sense at all. I could not comprehend that. Anyway, so a lot of growth with the company. They brought me on and other people to build the education team, and that's what we're doing. The world of travel nursing has shifted now. We're on the downward slide after COVID. A lot of facilities have got very clever with how to staff their facilities now with internal float pools, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do everything that we can to support our talent that are out there and also our clients to help manage the business, that essentially. So that's the thought process. It's been the biggest shift for me.
Are you guys ever looking at supporting virtual nursing then?
That is not one of our immediate goals.
Okay.
Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, who knows what might come? You put a thought into my mind there. That
Probably
might
should actually be on your agenda or be somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
It's coming.
And a quick side story, real quick. I was a patient in the hospital a few weeks ago, and I'm lying in the bed trying to get some rest, and I noticed that there's cameras in the rooms. And the next thing, the camera spins around and the TV comes on, and this voice appears. This is your virtual nurse. May I turn the camera on? Nobody had warned me. I was at a facility where I used to work, so I knew that this was going to come, but nobody had warned me. I mean, who knows what we could have been doing, you know, in the room. And then this
Or what kind of hallucinations you can induce in a patient that you don't want.
I've always worried about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you have a patient who's slightly demented, and all of a sudden, you know,
Well,
you hear
this is
this
it.
voice.
Imagine if I'd been a bit confused and delirious, and then you're hearing voices coming out of nowhere.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then she starts asking me questions, and she basically did half of the admission assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the nurse still had to come in and do the physical. So that's
Right.
Did it save time? I suppose it did, but I don't know if listeners remember, but I have particularly hard of hearing. And the first thing I said to her was, do you have closed captions? Oh, no. I said, well, there's your Fundamental American with Disabilities Act busted. You need to get...
Oh, good for you.
Still bringing that ruckus. I love it.
It was very hard for me to understand what she was saying. You know, I had to listen.
It was her funny accent, right?
So
Is her funny accent? No.
with my funny accent?
No, her funny
yes.
accent. Which her funny American accent.
I don't have the accent, remember? We've had this conversation.
That's true.
So, of course, that segues beautifully into the fact that, yes, at one point, and I suppose I still am, a degree of a metalhead. That's one of the reasons
You're deaf.
hearing is seriously. Because when I was still in high school, really, in my early nursing career, that's where my money went. Where's the nearest concert? And how loud is it? And who can I go with? I'll be in England in a couple of weeks, and there's a concert going on, and one of my old school friends has got in touch and said, do you want to go to this concert? I'm like, okay, well, why not? You know, so I won't hear for a month after that, even more.
So we need photographic evidence of your attendance at this concert.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
From award winner to metalhead.
What was that?
From award winner to metalhead.
There you go, in one day. That's right. So, you know, the look is not the same anymore. The hair is gone. But yeah, sometimes there's just nothing like a good, hard, heavy metal song.
Well, what are your favorite bands?
That's what I want to ask.
Yeah, first concert, you know. Oh,
Whitesnake.
Whitesnake. Oh my gosh, amazing. I love that.
Everybody out there is going to be like, who the heck is Whitesnake?
oh yeah, Whitesnake.
Okay, well, I know who they are.
I heard
Does that
that
help
Coverdale
me?
lives in Lake Tahoe now. Maybe I have to go on a little visit. Maybe I can look him up, you know?
There you go.
Yeah, that was my band.
That's awesome.
You know?
And you're lighting up I can tell you.
I know.
Whenever she's in her glory, she's like,
But the last year at convention in Las Vegas, Laura Johnson and I got up to all sorts of trouble with Johnny Osmond and Barry Manilow. So, I mean,
It's called balance.
it's called balance.
We took
Yes.
full advantage of the proximity of Barry Manilow because he was, his
We're very
company was
close. I mean,
At the hotel.
we were even closer to Donnie.
just thinking over the years and everything you've seen, why do you think so many nurses struggle with med-surg, and how have you overcome some of those struggles in your early years?
Well, I think because it's such a diverse population and you have to be a jack of all trades, but not necessarily a master of none. You have to find the support and the resources to develop the knowledge to take care of literally anyone that comes through the door. I mean, a typical medical surgical floor tend to be divided more, between a cohort medical, cohort surgical. You can have anything from a lap appy to a full-blown bowel resection and everything in between, and then add in the comorbidities that go with these patients. And so this is why education is just so important. And again, another reason why AMSN will always be there for that nurse, because the biggest challenges are just not knowing what's coming through the door and then suddenly having to have the skill set to take care of them.
It's interesting because I looked this up a while ago and I had to refresh my brain when you said that. It's always one of my favorite sayings. And the actual quote goes, it's Shakespeare, and it's, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one." And we do become the master of cardiac. You know, we don't blink. We see kidneys. We see appendix out. We see ortho. We just take it all. And we
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
just, I always wondered the beginning of that saying. And so, yeah, better than the master of one. And we have this skill set that just, we're able to do it all.
Finally, now we've come to realize, and I've noticed this working for this company I work for now, yes, there are placements for medical surgical nurses, but oftentimes clients will ask for med-surg tele, med-surg neuro, med-surg ortho, which helps people hone in on their skill sets for sure, because I would rather do a med-surg ortho than a med-surg tele, for example. Everyone has their niche where they want to practice.
Subcategory of it, yeah.
Yeah. And it still comes under that umbrella of med-surg nursing.
Which it does. And I find that interesting that we're subdividing and subcategorizing.
Mm-hmm.
So the unit that I manage is an ortho trauma unit, but we still take everything. So our preference might be, we take the elective ortho surgery, we take the traumas out of the emergency room.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we have a patient that needs a bed and they are an acute care patient.
Yep.
Guess who gets them?
Yes. If I have a bed and they need it and they have, appendicitis or, whatever.
Acute kidney injury.
Sepsis. Yeah, they're going to come. Like I have a bed and my nurses have the skills. So
in between my time when I came back to Georgia and started working for ProLink, I was a manager on what was an ortho spine unit. We had done a lot of training and the rooms were remodeled beautifully to handle the ortho spine population. Mm-hmm. But then the surgeon left. And so then, well, there goes your progress.
You're right,
Yes.
But we need the beds. Well, these nurses were specifically trained in ortho neuro spine.
Yes.
And then we pivoted and became the stroke unit. There's a big difference.
Oh, there's a big difference.
Yeah, apart from the neuro connection, but there's a big difference. So that's the other thing as a med-surg nurse. You've got to be able to learn to pivot, to turn on a dime, to turn your hand to whatever comes your way, or to collaborate with your colleagues and say, okay, who's got the cardiac knowledge? You could take those patients. Who's got the GI knowledge? You can drop that too. So a lot of flexibility needed for sure.
Absolutely.
From the convention earlier today, they were talking about how, and I think you mentioned it earlier, you said a while back you would go to med-surg for a few years and then go on to something bigger and better. And I think we've all recognized now that med-surg itself is a specialty. And I think we need to pivot our talking points towards that. Med-surg is not just a place for nurses to start. It can be a place where nurses thrive.
Yeah. To get admitted to the hospital these days, you have to be sick. It's not easy just to be admitted. And so when these patients come in, they often have comorbidities, they have problems that they've had for a long, long time and never addressed. And so that requires a more intensive assessment and monitoring and reassessment and monitoring. The patient just looks different than they did 20, 30, 40 years ago.
True.
They're just more acutely ill with lots of things going on. So as a medical surgical nurse, it's not the foundation of nursing anymore. It's not even a building block. It is a specialty all on its own. It really is.
And we're actually talking about that yesterday, about the critical thinking part. Because you have to know your basics, but to your point, it's not just a basic. It's
Of course.
complex.
Of course. A new graduate comes out of nursing school having spent 4 years, a lot of money, and passed a test. That sounds a little negative, but we find with the new graduate programs, I've been involved with 2 nurse residency programs over the years. And these nurses come out of school and they're the ones that will tell you, well, I've got it all in my head, but how do I take care of a patient? You need to teach me how to become a nurse now.
Yeah. Put that theory into practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially now, nurses that are coming out post-COVID and they've had 0 clinical.
Yep.
It's all been simulation. Thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for technology.
Mm-hmm.
But as we all know, there's nothing like taking care of a real patient.
Right.
And all the intricacies that go with that.
Yeah, seeing what it actually looks like. Yeah, a real patient.
Yeah. Some of them really still struggle with when they're in the room with one patient and have 5 others. They don't know how to be present and treat them like they are the only patient
Person
they're
in the
taking.
World.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a skill. That's a skill.
It is
They
a
have
skill.
to learn
Yeah.
that first year. And we talk about that all the time. That first year really, really is the hardest because of that.
Yes. It's very challenging to not give off the impression that
I got other things.
you're on my list, you're a task.
You're on my list, yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm marking you off. I have other things to do. And you really want them to show up for the patient and be very mindful, engage with them, be able to show empathy and
Absolutely.
and give that compassionate care that the patient needs. Even if it takes an extra 5 minutes, that extra 5 minutes is going to save you that call light being hit so many times.
Or that trust being built.
Yeah, exactly.
And Caroline, you said something very eloquently there too, though. But I remember actually when I went to nursing school, though, they said, we're giving you the knowledge not to kill someone. So better pay attention during your orientation. That's where you're going to learn what you're going to do to be a good nurse. And that's why you be very choosing who you precept under.
Yep. They're also more informed. So whether it's accurate information they're finding on Google,
Dr. Google.
but they also hear about customer service and the nurses being there for them. In fact, the floor I was on, all the rooms were being remodeled because where the computers are put in initially, by default, the nurse has her back to the patient.
Right.
So they are going through room by room and move in all the computers at the side of the bed.
Oh,
so
good.
that you can look and have an actual conversation. And one day the doctor came in to see me and she has an iPad. And the first thing she said was, this is your medical record. I'm not ignoring you, but everything about you is on on my iPad. So obviously some training had gone on there because let's face it, everything is just done electronically. We're all slaves to our phones. And for older patients especially, they feel like there's no connection.
Right.
And that's, again, being empathetic to the situation is a huge part of medical surgical nursing because you've got patients across the spectrum, but perhaps on the older side who are just not used to that kind of technology to take care of them.
Well, and it does feel like the patient population has gotten sicker. And I'm sure a big part of that is the availability of healthcare and the access to healthcare. There are some things that have just gotten easier to treat at home.
Yeah.
So as there's been advances in healthcare, there are things that we can treat at home, which means that the things that we're treating in the hospital are sicker patients. And so across my own career, I have seen the differences in how sick people are becoming. And so the patients that you're seeing in our med-surg units are sicker. And so it's a heavier load to carry.
Yeah.
But the ratios are still the same.
Heavier load to carry, the ratios are still the same, and the nurses are coming out of nursing school less prepared. So it's kind of just
It's an interesting mix.
Perfect storm.
The good thing is we know what the issues are, but how to fix them,
magic wand.
It's not. If only. The mentality of only going to a doctor when you're sick instead of health and wellness visits. The mentality of exercising, checking blood work, or proactively.
Preventative care.
And it's not something that people look at as a priority, unfortunately. And then they become twice as sick as they should have been and end up in the hospital. Being cared for by a med-surg nurse because of the broad skill sets.
Well, I want to add, yesterday there was a session about acuity tools, and I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if you guys attended that. And they did mention about making a scoring of the different tasks each nurse is doing and using that tool actually to assign patients. And now they're reducing the ratio. But also what's very interesting is that they align it with the nurse's experience.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
that is
very interesting. So the novice nurses, the LPNs, the experienced ones, how many patients they get, depending on the medications, ADLs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, acuity-based nursing is not new. If only everyone could do that consistently.
That's what I wanted to say.
You can have 5 independent patients, so you can have 5 total care patients. That's going to require more time and resources.
Does that mean my staffing grid can change?
Correct. So that's what they're
I don't know if your grid can change.
Right? Like, can my
Yes.
grid change based on experience?
Yes. So that's what they're
Like, I
trying
should
to
have seen this
recommend.
one.
Yes.
That would be amazing.
That's a research project, Alyssa. We're going to get to work
Yeah,
on
that's
that.
very interesting.
gosh.
That is actually what they did.
Was this a staffing task force?
No, it was a acuity-based tool.
Okay.
I got the tool as well.
Was
'cause
it
I wanted to
integrated
push it.
into the charting system?
Yes.
Yeah,
to the
that's-
EMR.
Yes, we have something
see
similar
those
at our
scores.
facility, and it goes into how many times the nurse has to click an order, or how many steps does that order entail? Are the supplies on the unit, or do they have to go get the supplies? I mean, it goes into that level of detail. So when you're assigning a nurse a group of patients, you can kind of visualize what their day is going to look like. Because this one has a lot more medications and a lot more procedures, whereas this one doesn't. So you can make your staffing assignments accordingly. So you don't give somebody 5 heavy patients and somebody else 5 easy patients.
Caroline, when you look back at your nursing journey, what wisdom would you share with our fellow med-surg nurses out there listening to this episode who may one day also be an AMSN President's Award recipient?
Be patient with yourself. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was your nursing experience. To get experience, you've got to get the experience. So be patient. Learn something new every shift. Take a moment to reflect on what has occurred during your shift. Journal that and look back on that when you've had the worst day or night in your life. We've all been there. Don't be afraid to volunteer. Look where it got me. Around the country and even into Europe, teaching certification review classes at military bases. But it also got me the opportunity to influence the outcomes of a medical surgical nurse by promoting something like certification to validate experience and competency. Nurture your own professional development. A lot of times it falls by the wayside because life gets busy. And so one of the things being a CRC faculty, it's given me that opportunity. And of course, with the years that have gone by, I have lots of experiences to share. And I just hope that someone can take something from that and use it for their benefit as well. There are always lots of opportunities within AMSN, so don't be frightened of that.
That's very inspiring. You're always very
You're too
inspiring.
kind.
Well, and one thing about the experience that you said, right? You don't get experience till you get it. Yesterday in one of the sessions, they said that experience is a hard lesson because you get the test first and then the lessons after.
There you go, yeah.
And I thought that was such an amazing way to put it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, believe it or not, we're just about out of time. But before we go, we'd like to once again thank Alyssa for joining us as special guest co-host for this episode.
Thanks for having me back, you guys. Always love doing this.
Also, we want to once again congratulate and thank our 2024 AMSN President's Award recipient, Caroline Ashman, for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and very grateful, very honored, feeling very humble. Thank you, everybody, for having me.
To our listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of MedSurg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
In the meantime, we encourage you to subscribe to MedSurg Moments wherever you listen to podcasts.
To reach us, use hashtag MedSurgMoments on your social posts.
Or send us an email at amsnpod@amsn.org. That's amsnpod@amsn.org.
We're all AMSN members, and if you love MedSurg Moments, we invite you to become a member of AMSN. You can learn more at www.amsn.org.
Finally, the content within the MedSurg Moments podcast represents the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
Until next time, this is Eric.
Laura.
Maritess.
Neo.
Sam?
And Sydney. And always remember, MedSurg Moments is a moment in our lives and a moment in our MedSurg careers that makes a huge difference.